Men discovered the first sign, Israel restored. The prophecies are crystal clear. Christ will not return to this world until after the restoration of the Jewish people to nationhood. On that New Year's Day of the year 1000, there was no need for Christians to panic at the time the Jewish people were scattered over the globe. As we approach the year 2000, Jews can celebrate their return to the land that their God had promised them. And what a land they've made of it. The dry, dead bones of the past sprang to life. Thousands upon thousands of trees were planted. Desert was turned into orchards. The modern Israelis have made themselves worthy of an ancient promise, but not without bloodshed. The Jewish people as a nation began when the patriarch Abraham obeyed his God's command.
Leave your country and go to the land I will show you.
This is the land his God promised him, a crossroads between Asia and Europe, at the heart of where civilization began, a land of wild hills and salt-encrusted shores. Geographically, the ancient Jews were wedged in between the superpowers of Egypt and Assyria, and surrounded by peoples determined to drive them out of the lands they believed God had assigned to them. Then, as now, the Promised Land was plagued by constant warfare. In time, Assyria conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. Its 10 tribes are lost to history. Later, the southern kingdom of Judah was overwhelmed by the forces of Nebuchadnezzar, and its people carried off to Babylon in chains. When the Persians crushed Babylon, Abraham's descendants were free to go back to the Promised Land. Then the Promised Land was occupied by Rome. Rome built cities, Rome built baths, Rome built amphitheaters, and Rome brought in her gods. The Roman yoke had become more than Jews could bear. They revolted, and it was a rebellion that took mighty Rome almost 4 years to crush. Now the wrath of Rome came down upon Israel in full fury. There was an explosion of fleeing Jews that reached to every known part of the globe. In their exile, they were sustained by the promise as set down by their prophets. This is what the Lord Almighty says.
I will save my people from the countries of the east and the west. I will bring them back to live in Jerusalem. They will be my people.
But Jerusalem fell into the hands of Muslim powers that Islamized it. For centuries, the land called Palestine was a part of the Ottoman Turkish Empire until the Turks were defeated in World War I. This permitted a trickle of Jews to return to the homeland. Then in the 1930s, from Nazi Germany, came shock waves of Jew-hating that paled the persecutions of the past. Jews were marked with yellow stars. Jewish storefronts were smashed. Synagogues were burnt down, sometimes with their congregations inside. By the millions, Jews were shipped to concentration camps in a program designed to annihilate the Jewish people once and for all. World War II erupted. After Germany's defeat, Jewish survivors of the Holocaust sailed to the shores of their ancient homeland, only to be turned back. Then, after 9 months of debate, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into an Arab and a Jewish state. On the 14th of May of 1948, the new state of Israel was born, and with it, the first sign pointing to Christ's return. People danced in the streets. They came singing. Jews as different from each other as Morocco is from Manhattan. Jews from the Casbahs and the souks, from New York's garment district, from hiding places in Amsterdam, from England and Switzerland, from refuge in Sweden, from India and Ethiopia, from Yemen and Detroit, Theirs was a biblical bonding to a land that most of them had never seen.
I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them.
These words of the prophet Amos were spoken some 2,700 years ago. Israel restored. To the world it seemed like the impossible dream, yet one by one the barriers that made it so were removed. Many believe by the hand of God. This sign has come in our lifetime. How many more will follow? The second sign, Europe united. Then said the king,
Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries.
Once this city of Rome was the greatest capital in the Western world. Today, Rome is still a capital of one of several Western European nations that have formed a confederation known as the European Union, or more commonly, the EU. The EU is dynamic. It upholds the ideal of a united Europe by integrating its member nations economically and politically. It adheres to common policies in trade, in agriculture. It fosters a single European monetary system for all of the member nations. It supports a multinational parliament. Should the EU decide to build the United Europe Army, it will emerge as the Roman Empire of the 21st century. Remarkably, the whole EU operation was foreseen some 2,600 years ago. It happened in Babylon, the fabled Babylon of the Hanging Gardens. King Nebuchadnezzar was tortured by a dream he had, and he sent for a Jewish visionary named Daniel to put him at peace. Daniel told him,
O king, your mind turned to things to come.
He went on to describe an enormous statue of 4 metals of varying degrees of hardness, depicting great empires of the ancient world. The golden head, Babylon. The silver chest and arms, the Persian Empire. And the bronze midsection, the conquering Greeks. The triumph of Rome over the others is represented by the statue's iron legs. Of particular interest are the feet of iron and clay, the 10 toes, symbolizing 10 nations that will yield their sovereignty to Rome. Daniel had his own vision of the future. It was nightmare. He saw 4 terrible beasts rising up out of the